Welcome to Field Notes, the monthly podcast of modern steel construction, the monthly magazine of AISC. I'm your host, Jeff Weisenberger, editor and publisher of MSC. Our guest this month is David Odeh, a principal with Odeh Engineers, the firm his father founded in 1978. David was also a keynote speaker at the recent NASCC, the Steel Conference in San Antonio, where he discussed the film Cities of the Future, Reimagining Our World, which is presented by ASCE and produced by McElravy Freeman Films. We'll talk about all of that and more. David, welcome and thanks for being here. Let's start from the beginning. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in and around Providence, Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. And I've, over the years, I've lived in various different cities in the United States, but eventually found my way back to New England about 25 years ago.
Okay. So when you were gone, when you were away from New England, where were you?
Well, I went to college in Providence, Brown, and when I graduated, I decided to pursue my graduate studies out at UC Berkeley. So I lived in the Bay Area, in California, and I had the great opportunity of working among some of the great structural engineers who were advancing ideas in retrofit and analysis of buildings for earthquakes and seismic design. So I really got turned on when I was out there to the more advanced aspects of engineering, like structural dynamics, and really fell in love with just taking buildings and studying them and understanding how they behave and how we can accomplish goals that our clients have as structural engineers.
Okay. Well, yeah, on that note, let's back up a little bit again. What made you want to get into that field in the first place?
Well, as you mentioned early on, my dad is a structural engineer.
Sure.
And I always tagged along with him as a kid to construction sites. And I just, frankly, when I was a little kid, I loved big machines. What I really wanted to do is be a bulldozer driver.
Of course.
Still do kind of, I think many people harbor that fantasy. But my mom and dad were both like really nurturing to me and my interests and what I wanted to do. I worked with my dad after school, and I really fell in love with programming of computers.
Okay.
And digital tools. And I grew up in the 1980s when personal computers were becoming really popular, and I discovered that you could really apply all these things that I loved about computer programming and digital tools to structural engineering, and it became a great path for me to work on my academic studies in college and then later in my career as an engineer.
Sure. Yeah, that's interesting. You got a little bit of the holistic construction experience, starting with the fascination with heavy machinery and then also the digital high tech side of things.
Yeah.
So, along the way, whether when you were a kid or just, between now and then, were there, early in your career, were there certain buildings or structures that, inspired you? Obviously you've got the family connection to engineering and that exposure, but just on your own, were there certain buildings that were particularly memorable for you or that made you go, oh, that's what it looks like when it's done and that's what I want to do?
Well, growing up in and around Providence, I've always loved architecture and kind of the fabric of both historic architecture and new architecture and how it comes together. Mm-hmm. Providence is a really unique city because it's blessed with some incredible old buildings.
Right.
Like our historic State House in Rhode Island. We have some very beautiful Art Deco buildings from the 1920s and 1930s. And it's just this amazing history of different types of structures and even new, really cool new buildings that are being built every year. Mm-hmm. So for me, I think a lot of my fascination with structural engineering was also driven by this idea that, I could have a part in building these mm-hmm. buildings, a really important part in making these buildings happen or giving them new life or changing their uses. For example, I know one of my dad's early projects back in the early 1980s was the transformation of Providence's historic railroad station. It was called Memorial Plaza or Union Station, mm-hmm. Into a new use as offices and restaurants and kind of a mixed-use complex. And it just involved all sorts of historic study of the old steel framing and rivets, and beautiful structures that were there, and preserving them and then reusing them. They added new floors inside of the building, changed the roof profile for some of the buildings. And it was, to me, just to see the process of that transformation was really fascinating. And it inspired me to want to do this for my career and really make a difference in cities, in the fabric of our urban infrastructure.
Sure. No, I understand. Yeah, that's a good point too. Sometimes it's not so much about building some brand new thing or brand new edifice that you conceived yourself, but kind of improving or saving, so to speak, something that's that's worth saving as far as a building. So your dad started Odeh Engineers, now a member of WSP, back in the late 70s, and I know the company's based in Providence and also has a Boston office. Can you talk a little bit about working in the family business, and also was it inevitable that you would eventually work in the family business?
That's a great question, and I think I don't know that I would say it was inevitable, but was certainly something that I always had in my mind. One of the things I did, as I mentioned earlier, was go out to grad school in California and work in a different market, work in a different environment. I think that was really important for me and my career, to learn from others, from other companies, to work at. I worked at a couple other companies before I came back, and I worked with my dad, and that really informed a lot of my knowledge, business and technical practices. It gave me a great perspective, I think. That was really critical to our later success as a company. And then, my dad is just an incredible mentor to me, and a wonderful person who really gave me the freedom to help him to build the business in a way that we could both feel like we were engaged in it. And we were both. It was about both of us. It wasn't just about his legacy. It was about creating something for the two of us, and I really owe him an incredible debt for that. And that's what I think made us successful, is this ability to explore new things, explore new ideas, and not just be not just kind of go down one path. Odeh Engineers, we became really well known, especially 15, 20 years ago, even starting at that time. For our digital design tools and our custom developed technologies like three-dimensional visualization systems. We were one of the early adopters of building information modeling. We developed our own software to link building information modeling tools and structural analysis tools. All of that stuff was kind of out a little bit at the edge, at the cutting edge of the way that structural engineers practiced. And it made it really exciting for us. And it also kind of shined a light on our firm. Even as a small company, that many started to recognize us as innovators and those that could help the profession in general advance the way that we practice. So I think that's that unique environment that was created by first my dad, and then the two of us working together to build this this practice that our team could thrive in, was the source of our success at Odeh.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about businesses that are multi-generational, there's different ways to do it, right? I mean, you could have gone straight in, but it sounds like obviously going out to west and kind of forging your own path, or kind of getting your own experiences out there. I mean, yeah, like you said, I think it was the best possible outcome for the firm when you eventually did come to work there. And especially when it came to the early adoption of technology in BIM, like you said, that's really great. So how's the firm evolved and expanded? I mean, I know you started with one office, now you have two, and I'm also curious how you became part of WSP, which I understand is a pretty recent situation.
Well, over the years, we grew. We started in Providence, and we were able to thankfully attract some really great clients in other parts of the country, particularly in the Boston area. Which is a center, as you know, for architecture and structural engineering. but also in other parts of the United States. We kept growing, and we never diminished our goals for the company to get to take on larger and larger projects. We worked over the years often with our colleagues at WSP, got to know them really well about 5 or 6 years ago when we worked together on a very large project in Boston. It's the tallest residential tower in Boston, and the tallest building that's been built in quite some time in the city, called One Dalton. And we worked not only with WSP's great mechanical, electrical, plumbing team, but with their structural engineers in New York City, who are very well known and fantastic structural engineers, being the engineers for such great projects as One World Trade Center and some of the tallest and most slender structures in the world. And this meeting where we were able to work together as a team on this project in Boston really helped us to get to know each other and learn from each other. And we developed a great relationship and decided that we wanted to come together as one firm. So that was about 18 months ago that happened. So it was October of 2022. We decided to bring Odeh Engineers to its next stage, which was to become part of the WSP organization. A big reason why we decided to do it was that continuous drive for growth for our firm and frankly for our staff, to give them a newer and bigger platform to grow in their careers. We wanted them to have new challenges, to be able to work on things like the most challenging and complex structures in the world, and not be limited by just what we do in our region or what we do in our specific office, but really learn from what is a global network of structural engineers. So we're very excited about our future now as we're part of WSP.
Sure. Yeah. No, it seems like you said. It seems like it was like the next, kind of natural progression of sorts. That's good to hear. So I'm just curious. Whether recent or just throughout your career, can you point to one or two of the more memorable steel frame projects that you've worked on, either in terms of something you're extremely proud of and or something that was a real bear to work on?
Well, I've had the privilege of working on so many great and cool projects, frankly, over the years, and using structural steel to solve really challenging problems for architecture and create elegant solutions for those challenges has been really so much fun, frankly, and so interesting. A couple I would just point out that I think maybe our one might be a surprise would be Providence's little power plant. It's called South Street Landing now. That building is a steel frame structure that was built in the 1920s. And was recently converted by our team into an academic center. The building was your classic structural steel power plant. It had it almost looks like a cathedral on the inside, but this cathedral was to the machine age. It once housed massive turbines, has huge cranes inside of it, ridge cranes that some of which were preserved in place. We took the building and we added multiple steel frame floor levels inside of the building and on top of it to create penthouse levels, and all the while doing a full-on lateral force resisting system upgrade to the structure to bring it up to modern codes, and then augmenting its foundations to support all these new floors. It was a real challenge. It took many years to do. It involved all sorts of great technologies, including, it was one of the first times we used point clouds and laser scanning to scan all of the existing structural steel. We had some existing drawings for this building, but that single source of truth really needed to be a point cloud so we could see where that steel was. So this is really one of my favorite projects, and I always look back on it. We finished it a few years ago. It's totally transformed that part of Providence. Really great project for us. Another one that comes to mind, a much more recent project, is a really neat project we did up at MIT. Right in Kendall Square in Cambridge, we designed what is today the tallest building in Cambridge, Massachusetts. not a huge hurdle
Right.
to get over. It's not like New York, but
Sure.
but we're really proud of it. And one of the things we did is a hybrid structure built with kind of a composite system of steel and concrete. And I think it's a really cool use of structural steel, because this building had a very special feature, and that was a very long cantilever over a park that had to be accomplished for a variety of reasons. The cantilever's at the fifth floor of the structure. It sticks out, almost 50 feet into over this park, and then it has about 30 stories built on top of it.
Okay.
To do that, we came up with this hybrid composite steel truss system that was used to avoid having to have any shoring on the cantilever when they built the upper parts of the tower. And that was really important to the project to make it a success, so that they could build it in the time that they wanted to build it, get it open on time, but also not impact the levels below it, the part below that.
Mm-hmm.
That cantilever. So very challenging, really careful analysis and modeling that had to be done to make it a reality. And we're very proud of that project.
It sounds like you've all done quite a bit of some memorable work. I mean, I know those are just two out of many. But switching gears, can we talk a little bit about the film? I want to know a little bit about what Cities of the Future, Reimagining Our World. Again, that's one you discussed at the Steel Conference, and I know it's going to be released this year. Can you just tell me a little bit about it and maybe what you expect to be some of the main takeaways?
I've been deeply involved in a project at American Society of Civil Engineers called the Future World Vision for about 5 years now.
Okay.
And this project is a little different than what the engineering profession has seen in the past. It is an initiative to help engineers visualize what will happen in the long-term future to infrastructure. Not just what's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years, or what do we need to design for today, but how do buildings and structures need to adapt, and how do systems of infrastructure need to adapt to cope with the many trends that can be very disruptive to our world, to society. Think of things like climate change, renewable energy, autonomous vehicles, aerial vehicles. Even policy and funding issues. How will these things come together in the future to shape the cities that we're designing today? That's what the Future World Vision is about. And it's a group of professionals that came together in order to create scenarios of cities for the future that represent these, not a prediction of what the future will be, but trying to really understand what the boundaries of the future might look like. What we really should be thinking about today. And it's not science fiction. It's based on real, that's important. It's based on real ideas that engineers, are working on today, that our brightest minds are working on today to help build a better world for the future. We had the idea, so the first step in that process was we created these scenario cities. We actually created a virtual reality world called the Mega City.
Okay.
You can see it online. futureworldvision.org. You can actually download it and go around in this world and immerse yourself in what a city, a large-scale, vertically integrated city might look like in 50 years. I'm very excited to say that the next step in our program was to create a new movie. ASCE has some great history with filmmaking. We had a great film called Dream Big. In this film, but this film's a little bit different than Dream Big. It takes the ideas of the Future World Vision, kind of takes us on a tour of what engineers are doing today that are building the technologies that are on display in the mega city. And in so doing, kind of introduces us to the people, the engineers who are actually working on these things. And also kind of brings us through what types of real technologies there are out there now, in the areas of things like aerial vehicles and advanced materials, new ways of building structures using robotics, new ways of kind of thinking about infrastructure that I think makes it kind of really brings it home for the audience. And I'm very excited to say the movie came out during Engineers Week. And we're releasing it. It's kind of like on a rolling release in IMAX. You see it in this like massive IMAX 3D format. It'll be shown at science museums all around the world. It's in limited release right now. It's in the United States and in a select few countries.
Okay.
We should see it. We should see it in many other theaters in the near future.
I can't wait to see this. This sounds fascinating, especially on IMAX. Hopefully, if I can make that work.
Yeah, it's gonna be really cool. You have to see it in IMAX.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm due to see an IMAX movie, so yeah, this will be the next one on the list. No, it's interesting because you were talking earlier about a couple of your more memorable projects. About one, being new, the one in Cambridge, and then one being a retrofit of sorts. And I like the idea of seeing like a theoretical, almost like a brand new city built from scratch. But I mean, the name of the film is Reimagining, and I know the challenge is not just like building something new from scratch that's going to be, accessible and take into consideration all of the new things like autonomous vehicles and aerial vehicles. But I think the harder part will be kind of adapting what we've got now as far as large cities for some of those technologies. But it'll be difficult. But that's why we. That's why those jobs eventually become memorable, I suppose.
Well, that's part of the challenge of the future work vision to engineers in our profession. What we ask them to do is visualize what future city will be in 50 years, but then try to tell the story of how we get from today to that vision,
right,
to what you're envisioning in 50 years. What are the steps that we have to take? It's not going to happen overnight.
Right. And
it's going to require us to preserve and perhaps build on top of or around or augment the existing infrastructure that we have. And that's a really critical part. You'll see that in the movie, and you'll see that in the visualizations of the mega city that appear in the movie. And that's a thing that we hope inspires engineers to think a little differently about the way that they work.
Very cool. Yeah, looking forward to it. Looking forward to seeing it and hearing more about it. So just going back in time a little bit, we're talking about the future, but let's go back to Providence, which obviously, as you said earlier, is a pretty old city. I understand you don't actually live in Providence anymore, but you're obviously from there, and Odeh Engineers is based there. Is there a little known secret about the city that you're willing to share, or maybe could you share your favorite thing about it? And I'm asking for everybody, asking for myself too, because I'm ashamed to say that's one large American city that I have yet to get to.
There's so many things about Providence to discover. It's a beautiful and walkable city filled with beautiful architecture and parks and things to do. And it's a great place to live. Many of my team members live there and have moved from other parts of the country to be there. If I had to point to a few things that might be of interest, one would be our riverfront. One of the things that was very visionary about the redevelopment of Providence back in the 1980s was there was an effort to open up the riverfront and create these beautiful river walks along there are kind of two rivers that meet, come to a confluence in Providence, and then flow into the bay. And you can walk. Over the years, that river walk has been expanded from the main downtown area to a place called Water Place, which has a beautiful park, river-themed park that you can walk around, all the way out towards the bay. And as you walk around this river walk, you can step up the stairs and see all sorts of really cool neighborhoods in the city with wonderful things to eat. Providence has fantastic foods. One does not lose weight in Providence. It's a great place to hang out, and I spend many hours doing that. It's great. My wife and I love doing that with our friends and family. We have a great event along that riverfront called the Water Fire that I would also mention that Odeh Engineers, we've been very proud to be somewhat involved in Water Fire. It's kind of a little difficult to describe, but it's basically an art exhibit that happens periodically during the warmer months where bonfires are lit in the river, and these kind of beautiful wood fires And you walk along at night and the river walk, and there's kind of this ethereal music playing, and you hear the crackling of the fires, and there are gondolas on the river, and it's a very unique experience, very uniquely Providence experience that I definitely recommend for anybody who wants to visit the city.
Very good. It's funny you mentioned that. I was wondering if you're going to bring the what's it called again? The event,
It's called Water Fire.
Water Fire. Yeah, my wife has actually been there for work, and she came back when she happened to be there at the time, and she's like, "You got to come see this at some point." So yeah, that is definitely on the list. That wraps up another edition of Field Notes. Once again, I'm your host, Jeff Weisenberger, and our guest has been David Odeh of Odeh Engineers. Thanks for listening, everyone.